So good to meet you finally.
Yes.
She's a bit of a fangirl.
I am.
used to read Letter From North Ronaldsay online in America 20 years ago.
Yep, it was some of the archives that they had online. I was researching this fantasy book I was writing, and I just needed more information about little things like what kinds of flowers were here and the weather and things like that I couldn't find from the books I had ordered. And but I did find your archive online in the Orcadian.
The Orcadian for a while put my letters online, and then this stopped.
Oh, they're not on anymore?
No, they've covered. I don't know how many they're on. But all this last 10, 15 years now.
Oh, well.
All the more reason.
That's what I was going to say, yep. Just all the more reason why they need to be out in book form.
He's brewed traditional ale there. It's the only time that I've had real ale that was done for scratch, for getting the malt, getting the barley, soaking it in the barn, doing the sweet beds
Did he do all
in the
that?
barn. Yep. And then he would dry it on the kiln, malt it, and he'd brew absolutely traditionally for scratch. And it was the weirdest beer you've ever had in your life, because it was smoked, and you associate malt whiskey, some of them are being peated, being smoked, but you had smoked beer because you were drying the malt with peats.
Square tower that's up there on the right hand side, it's on the horizon. That's a memorial to a laird who was out shooting one day and he jumped over a dike and his gun went off. He hadn't broken it, so when he jumped over the dike, the gun discharged and shot him. Or so the story goes anyway. There was rumours of suicide as well, but I think it was probably, people I think accept that it was an accident. I don't know if it's easy done. I don't shoot, but if you don't break a gun and you're jumping over a dike, the jolt can set it off. Because you got to remember, these are old. This is nearly 100 years ago, and it was old double-barrel shotguns.
And you think that cone-shaped thing is a sight line for the boats?
Yeah, I think that's what that was. It was just used as a mark so that they could. They would have what they call meads, which it's when you lined up two features like a house with a headland, or you'd line them up, and you knew that was, once you had those two positions lined up, that's where the good fishing was.
Right.
So that's just one of those that they've put in to do that.
I've seen me sitting watching this videos of the otters. It's quite a reason.
Yeah.
And they're quite intelligent. And they say that octopuses are
Oh
Yes, yeah.
apparently.
They are pretty smart.
Imagine a smart octopus. We never liked them when they come in the creels. Their arms, tentacles would go all over you. You'd be sort of caught in their tentacles.
Oh, they
I
grab
never
onto you.
liked them.
Yeah.
And then they would, if you put them on the tulfers or the floor of the boat, they would change colour instantly.
Oh, that's so
to fit the
interesting.
colour.
Yeah.
And they also squirted out ink,
Yeah.
black ink. I suppose underwater it would have confused whoever was trying to catch them. But we never, and they kill the lobsters, unfortunately.
Oh.
Well, that's what they're in for.
Mm-hmm.
They want lobster too?
Yeah. It's the lobsters are in the creel, so they can't get away from
But
it.
they couldn't eat them, could they? Well, they do have little beaks, don't they?
A man seen a grand film one octopus on the deck with a trawler, and it had been chucked in on the deck, and it was crawling away along and it found the pretty hole you can for letting the water out, and there was a couple of bits of wire over it you can stop things from falling out, you know, and he didn't want to fall out. And it found on that anyway, and it got so crawled through this one pretty hole, and he went splop down in the sea again. Yeah. So.
I didn't like them when they sort of went round about your arm or your hand or something.
No, that wouldn't be.
But it's the way that they change colour or some reason. How on earth they manage to do that, but they do.
Yeah, cuttlefish do the same as well.
That's right.
They flush different colours depending on their mood and what they're up to. You know.
But you need to watch. Well, I think they've been caught. I don't know. Maybe I don't know. On 5 or 6 times that they've been caught with claw.
Mm.
And the thing to do was, you know, the other claw was to start squeezing it, and then they would let go of the one that's catched your finger.
Oh, really?
But the one time when I made no difference to this lobster and the other claws, it tightened even more and more and more. It was days before I could use the finger.
Ah.
But usually if you meddle with the other claw, they would let go.
Distract them.
But on this occasion, instead of it, they increased the pressure. And I mean, they can break a finger. I've seen the clicks that we used, the wooden clicks, to take in the thing and put it into them, and they would mark it. So you can imagine your finger being in.
Yes.
You would watch what you're up to.
Certainly would.
So what's the story about this one?
The story of this stone is that there was an old giant woman who lived in the island here, and she got down under the beach one day and she found this big stone there. So she stuck her finger through it and then carted it up here and stuck it in the ground. And there it remains to this day.
Of course.
And the hole in it, as you can see, you might just get your hand. You might just get your hand through that. I guarantee you would get it back out again.
Yeah, I don't think I'd try it.
I would certainly not recommend it. Because as an ancient monument,
Yes.
there's only one of these. Plenty of hands, and you've got two.
Right.
So if you got your hand stuck, it would actually make more sense to cut the hand off rather than damage the stone.
I think we would all agree about that.
And it would also be a learning curve as well.
Don't do that.
Mm.
It's an awful tall one.
You can see the mark in there and the monument to the laird. So, I mean, it's quite a height.
You see where the cattle and the sheep rub themselves on the sides of it.
Yeah, perfectly smooth, just great for an etching post.
Celebrations that were based
Old
on
traditions,
old
customs.
traditions, and a lot of them they didn't even know what it was all about really, but it was kind of a tradition that had been passed down, and then they revived it, and they still do it, and it's become a new thing that they do in a different way. The big one. Just because, because it's their thing in that place. It's like the ba. There were actually several
Yes.
games that were very similar to the ba.
Which had been on the go for a long time. It was just some of the
Some of these customs had died out after the First World War because a lot of men had died.
Yes.
And it just hadn't been started yet. Like the bar playing in Orkney, you know, every island parish and all that had their own bar game. And then by the end of the First World War, there was some started up, but then only get on for maybe a couple of years and then stopped. Whether it was because a lot of the young men that were participating were killed in the war, or whether it was, well, also, you know, just folk. It brought back memories of folk who were no longer there and that should have been there. So it got abandoned, it got kind of lost heart in it. The Kirkwall one carried on going. And it seemed to be like that with Ben's film as well. It was folk were doing this different old customs that they had always done, but a lot of them had died out early in the 20th century and got revived again. They're in the early 70s. There seems to have been a real revival through the country in the very early 70s to start these things up again.
But they didn't really know everything that happened and what it was all about, but they knew little bits of it, and so they kind of put it back together and made a new tradition out of it, which now carries on.
Well, the harvest homes had always been, I think burn suppers, the first burn supper that I can discover was only in 1933, I think it was. But the burn suppers had been, because I've got the treasurer's book that goes back to the beginning of the old hall. The Memorial Hall was in 1920. So every year you can tell that the events that they had, like the celebrations for victory in Europe and all this kind of stuff.
Community school is there. That's where they have their harvest homes, and then there's a bit built onto the side of it. That's there. So it's all community school.
It's another thing that I find, I don't know whether you noticed that in England, but with the burn suppers, I know one or two North Ronaldsay. Oh, for God's sake, don't have all those boring speeches, they say. I say this is a burns night and you bloody well sit and listen and try and understand something.
What else do you do besides
but
eat?
What about the folk, is the young folk interested? No, as you say, everything's changed. Inevitably, everything changes through time. I think that the older we get, the less pleased we are with some of the changes. I think.
But I do think some people anyway, will always be interested in understanding more about where all of this came from in the the early days, that things that they're not familiar with. There will always be people who are. That's why we're printing the kinds of books that we're printing, because we want to preserve those kinds of things, because people are interested in them and they are important. There's a lot of wisdom.
I don't know how often he's watched Whiskey Galore.
Oh, I love that movie. It's one of my favourites ever.
He knows every bit of it. So I came in there one day and he was sitting watching it, and his daughter was there. She didn't seem to see the humour.
Oh, really? I think it's hysterical. I
Always
love
been
it.
one of my favourite films.
Yeah.
Oh, I was pity.
And Laxdale Hall is another one.
Mm-hmm.
And The Maggie's another one.
I haven't seen the Maggie.
You haven't seen The Maggie? You'll have to look at it in your YouTube next when you go
The
back to
Maggie.
Scotland.
The Maggie. Okay.
Oh, Whiskey Galore. The new versions of it, I wouldn't even bother to look at it.
No, we thought so too. It was kind of pretty much the same, but not somehow. It didn't quite capture it somehow.
No,
it wasn't
no,
as funny.
No.
No, the original one was great.
There's a number of the films like that you can look at again and again and again because they're that well edited, and also the actors they seem to be part of the period.
Yeah.
There's a change to the whole feel of the island, I think. But this is just what's happening all over.
Yep.
It is.
Yeah.
There's nothing. Well, you age, and of course, comes a time when you can't do this or that. So I don't know. I try and pick things that I can remember that might be of interest. In fact, I would need to be writing a letter shortly.